Happy St. Patrick's Day. This is your host, Bob Cook, and I am calling this a pre-beta podcast. And, the funny thing, I just ran through this whole thing, and I thought, wow, that went pretty well. And it didn't record. I messed up. I'm sure it's user error. So we're going to give this another shot. The whole purpose of this is to introduce this concept of a podcast, hopefully maybe weekly. And I am calling it LFC, Living for Christ, A Walk to Eternity. And it could also be AKA One Guy and a Mic, and which I hope to have as Two Guys and a Mic. And I'm actually doing this, what I call pre-beta podcast, to help sell a friend of mine who's a pastor that I hope he'll join me and be a co-host for this. But right now, it's me, Bob Cook, and you may ask, well, what does this qualify, or how is this individual qualified to have this discussion on living for Christ and a walk to eternity? I'm just a guy. I'm doing the best I can, and we're all in this together. I'm going to give you a little bit more background. We're loosely tied, I hope to be loosely tied to a church at some point as well, but more importantly, to the broader church, right? To our church community here in this area in Southwest Michigan, as well as within our state and within our country, and of course the world, right? Because the church is not just a building. It's not just a particular church, family, but it's all of us worldwide. And so hopefully we'll be introducing another co-host as well. The purpose of the podcast is to encourage others to live for Christ as aliens in this world, right? As believers in Christ and followers of Christ, we are not of this world, right? Our citizenship is in heaven. And so we'll discuss topics, some topics that'll be heavier, some topics will be lighter and fun, and they'll all be fun. But I think we'll have a good time together and learn together. So let's encourage one another. And then the target audience will be Christians and perhaps seekers, right? Those that wow, I know there's something out there that is missing in my life, and what is it? And I want to feel complete. I want to feel, I think God creates in us this inherent hole, this inherent need for something more, a purpose, and also a need for eternity, and kind of knowing where is this all headed. And so we'll discuss that topic as well. And I'm going to go through a whole host of topics here. I just did. I spent a lot of time going through all these, and it was so much fun. And it didn't record. So hopefully this will keep recording this time. So our focus will be walking, struggling together, insights, lessons, learn, transparency of just how things can be challenging in life, and also the joy that we can have in life. I really do believe God has come so that we can live life more abundantly, right? And what does that mean? So I hope that this pre-beta is just me as a host, and just kind of introducing this whole idea of the podcast, again called LFC, Living for Christ, A Walk to Eternity, or One Guy and a Mic. And but later, I'm hoping there'll be two of us, and we can even bring in some guests, not necessarily famous people, maybe famous people, but sometimes it's just someone that we can learn from their story, right? We all have our own story. We all have our backgrounds, our struggles, our challenges, our successes, and sharing those together. So at some point in time, me and my potential co-host will talk about our backgrounds, our testimonies, our passions, our interests, perhaps our fears, our dreams, our challenges, our struggles. Are we experts? No. No, we're just two guys and a mic. We're just discussing life and maybe doing a little research. Maybe some of that's just from the School of Hard Knocks, but other research might be done on some of these topics that we've talked about so that we can bring to you information from people much smarter than me anyway, that have shared information in books and podcasts and things like that. So again, we want this to be about helping people in their walk to eternity. Again, what qualifies us? I don't know. I just said in my notes, we're humans and we're made in the image of God, right? God created us in his image, or in our, what he says in Genesis, our image. And who is our, right? The Trinity, created in God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. And, these are, in fact, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the Trinity in one of the podcasts, or multiple podcasts. I mean, some of these will go across multiple podcasts. Because that can be heavy for people that maybe haven't been experienced. It can be heavy for me. And I've had some training and background in it. So we'll discuss that. So we'll have some script, some discussion points. We'll have some questions that spur us, that kind of lead us through that trail, and we'll see where it goes as we approach each podcast, or as I approach each podcast. So we'll do some recording, maybe some light editing, but we want this to be real. And we don't obviously want long periods of dead space, which has never been much of a problem for me and perhaps my co-host that will join me. But we'll make sure that it flows. So here we go. I hope I can remember some of the things I said before, but regardless, God is ultimately in control. So maybe this will be even better. Here is a rundown. This is a 20, 30,000 foot view of potential topics. And if any of these interest you, please join us as we proceed with this podcast. All right. I'll probably editorialize on some of these, but then some of them I'll kind of go a little bit faster so we can keep, moving through this. Okay. So here we go. Creation. God, the Bible, Jesus, the Word, the Trinity. We referred to that earlier. The Holy Spirit. How can I be confident I am going to heaven? And what's interesting about that is a month or so ago, I actually felt led to do a write-up just based on my personal experience and everything that I've heard from pastors and read and watched videos and everything like that, because it really pains me to hear someone that is searching and realizing, okay, I believe in God. I believe there's a heaven, but boy, I sure hope I get there. And, the fact of the matter is you don't have to hope. And please don't be in that category of having to hope. Let's talk about that. Let's make sure you're confident. And let's make sure you're confident in that you're going to heaven. You'll be with God in eternity. It's a gift. And it's a free gift. And faith in that gift is free. And there's so much to be said about this. I've created a pamphlet, and maybe we'll use that as a guide for that topic, but there's just so much more. So kind of along with that, again, there's no particular order of these. They were just kind of booming out of my head. Many of these at like 3 a.m. in the morning the other day, and I had to open up my phone and make notes so I could lay my head back down and hopefully go to sleep. But I just, was excited to be able to share some of these topics of potential discussion. And, if we cover all this is going to be years worth of, I'll be probably home, with the Lord, right? Our home is in heaven, right? This earth, we're only aliens. So, okay, let me keep going. Salvation, community, right? The church, right? The church, the broad church, right? Our church family, here locally. It's not just a building, right? And then we've got the church universally across the world. All those of us that are tied together because of Christ. Here's kind of one that's out there a little bit. Aliens and Bigfoot and some of this kind of paranormal, this big topic now. How does that fall in? And how, as Christians, do we look at that? And a journey. And I'm calling the subtitle, A Journey from Alpha to ... a walk through biblical history, right? Oh man, this could be so good. How just start from the beginning and do this like kind of a quick walkthrough. It won't be quick, but it'll certainly be quicker than maybe going in detail about every single thing. But you get this 30,000 foot view overview, just overall to kind of understand how everything progressed. This was one I titled "How You Doing?" How you doing? It's a discussion of messages from the prior week as a follow-up. Maybe this is a separate podcast. Maybe this is associated with it. But my friend that I hope joins me on this podcast is a pastor, and I thought, maybe every Wednesday we have a quick "How you doing?" in follow-up to his message. How have you applied it to your life? What applications are there from it, and how you doing? Next topic: does God have a sense of humor? Humor in the Christian's life. Wow, I think this could be cool, because I think God, I'm just tipping my hand here, but I think God does have a sense of humor. If you look at some things in my life, if you just look at me, I think he has a sense of humor. But I think it could be a fun topic, because I think as Christians, we are to be joyful, and people should look at us. I've had a good friend tell us and share, and I think it's even in maybe Revelation, somewhere in the Bible, that there's a scent about Christians. There's a scent. People should sense, maybe even smell in a good way, that there's something different about you. And it should be something that's attractive, right? And unfortunately, we have so many people that are struggling with having faith because of the hypocrisy that is sometimes seen in the church. But at the same time, we're all sinners, right? And we all struggle. So at the same time, we need to give each other grace and mercy. But we're human. But we can go around and have all kinds of discussions about that. Grace and mercy. I just mentioned grace and mercy in that last topic, but are they the same? Are they different? Do we deserve them? There's so many places we could go. Music and the power of ... the power of music. That's a broad topic. Growing up. And us, me and my co-host, or me now, the differences growing up. What was it like growing up in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s? How is it now? What are the differences? What are the challenges? What's the good, bad, and the ugly? Sports. There's all kinds of things. Sports analogies. Lou Holtz, the coach that took Notre Dame, University of Notre Dame football, to the last national championship for Notre Dame in 1988, just passed away recently. And what great stuff, came out of his leadership style and how he could take that team. And and there's other coaches, and there's analogies, and there's just sports in general. And I don't know, we could go in a lot of different directions with that. Some of these topics, it's not just going to be a 20-minute podcast. It's probably going to be part 1, part 2, part 3. Fathers, mothers, Cain and Abel. I don't know. Again, there's no rhyme or reason for the order, but Cain and Abel, first murder. Moses, Joseph, David, Jonah, Peter, Paul, who was called Saul. I throw out some of these names, and certainly many more, because God used imperfect people in the Bible. And sometimes Satan wants to tell us, as an old pastor Steve Brown with the real deep voice used to say, lies from the pit of hell. I can't do a very good job there, but Satan so often wants us to be paralyzed and stop in our tracks because God could never use me. God, I've made too many mistakes in my life. Our pastor just discussed this a week or two ago as well. But God, there's example after example as God used men and women like you and me in the Bible to do great things for him. Not perfect, made mistakes, worked through those mistakes. And enough said about that, but I mean, it's not enough said because we could go on and on. Romans, the early church and the church now. Romans covers a lot of the early church, and there's just so much, and kind of from that early time to now. Baptism, right? Baptism can be a divisive thing within the broad church, because there are different ways, denominations, talk about how, they believe in doing baptism. But what does baptism mean? And does it matter how it's done? And should those preferences really drive us apart? A lot of good discussion there. Does baptism get you to heaven? There's just so many different things. Can you baptize an infant and ensure they're going to heaven? There's all kinds of things. But it's a gift, right? It's a gift. It's an open representation, or showing individuals that, hey, I want to be a Christ follower. I want to do the best I can, and I am giving up myself to be able to follow Christ. Politics and the Jesus follower. All right. Two topics you should never discuss: religion and politics, right? And here I am. We could go all over that. Justice and fairness. Is the world always fair? Is everything always fair? Does justice always prevail? Maybe in the end, right? Maybe not now. Maybe sometimes now. I don't know. We could go in a lot of different directions with this. Family. Wow, family. How has the family changed? I remember Dan Quayle, who discussed the family, and I think he was dead on in a lot of ways, that the breakdown of the family, things were happening that affect our culture, affect our country, our nation. Anyway, there's a long way we could go with that. Death, right? Death is a situation that can cause people to pause and think about life, whether it's someone close to them, whether it's a friend, just knowing the finality of, hey, I will never be able to talk to this person again on the phone, or sit across the table from them, or just knowing they're there. So what is this all about? I mean, this can be a time and prompt people to really do some reflection. So I think it'd be a great topic. Finances, debt, money. Hey, we live in a culture that encourages people to live in debt. And, are people bad that live in debt? I don't think so. But is there a better way? I think there could be. And I think there's a lot of resources out there. And I think we live in a culture that makes it so easy. And frankly, we can be prisoners, right? We can be held hostage. And look at our nation. The USA, I don't know how many trillions and billions, or whether they, of dollars that we are in debt as a nation. And can a family live that way? And again, there can be, it's not to beat anybody up, but how can we help people? How can we edify? How can we build up and help people see? And there's some great literature out there that's available, that from, there's Ramsey, Dave Ramsey, there's Larry Burkett, there's others that are believers, there's others that have material that can help us live in a way where maybe it's a lot less stressful, and it may require some hard choices to say no or not live like the rest of the world. But anyway, we could go a lot of different directions. How about creation in a man's heart, the desire to create and enjoy? I'll editorialize some of these a little bit to kind of whet your appetite. But this is one that I think is near and dear to me because we were created in God's image, or in our image, as God said it in Genesis, and what the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. One thing that God did as he created was he would say, "This is good. I created and it was good." And on the seventh day, he stopped and he rested and he looked at his creation, and it was good. And I think there's something inherent in every man and woman about creating something, whether it's a craft, whether it's cooking a recipe or baking something, whether it's mowing the lawn, maybe it's picking up sticks in the yard to clean up the yard, maybe it's plowing snow, maybe it's doing woodworking and creating a project, or installing something, or fixing something. There's something in us that we so often like to be creators. And we need to also take that time to step back and look and say, wow, God allowed me to fix this refrigerator, with help, his help and help in the resources around me. But there's some satisfaction there, and it's okay, I think, to rest a little bit and relish in that. You put a new walk-in and a new patio. We can work, but take a day. Sit, grill out, invite some friends over, and enjoy that new patio you just put in. Where are we? Spiritual warfare. Ugh, man, where can we go with that? I think it's alive and well. There's so many places we could go. And we've had some nice small groups at the church I attend, and it's a topic that interests a lot of people. Prophecy. Again, we've had some small groups on that too. There's good information out there. Not only did Christ fulfill, they say over 500 or prophecies. If you look at prophecies that are fulfilled, and if you look at prophecies yet to come, there's just so much. Witnessing to people, telling them about your faith. And young men is a topic. Young women as a topic. How has the family changed through history? It kind of dovetails into some of the other topics I've had. Again, these were like topics that I woke up around 3 a.m. in the morning and started making notes because I couldn't fall back to sleep because so many things were coming into my head. But this is like slinging it on the wall, see what sticks, and see where we go from there. Let's see, war, right? I mean, right now we're in a war with Iran. So that's can be a pertinent topic in how there's just so many places we could go. So you think now is bad, right? History now and in the future. So often I hear, and I say, oh my gosh, look at how things are so bad right now. And you know what? There were some bad times in history, right? You think, I was reading a book on Abraham Lincoln in the Civil War. Man, I'll tell you what, if you lived back then and you didn't think it was all coming to an end, every nation has risen, many nations have fallen. And, the fate of the United States kind of hung there on all of that. And Abraham Lincoln was a pretty amazing individual that I believe, God put in a place for that time. And, God uses kings and leaders in the world, even that maybe are not Christians. But nothing happens that doesn't pass through his hands. That's just my editorial comment. But there's some tough things. What about the Middle Ages? So many different things. What about World War II? Near-death experiences, right? We've had some people close to us that have had the privilege of being near a loved one when they passes, and some things happen that kind of spoke to them, those that were around that situation. And there's a lot of discussion. There's books written on this. It's a topic of interest. So I think it can be fun. Heaven, hell. I mentioned this earlier. The Crusades, the Middle Ages. Why bad things happen. Man, I mean, we could go on that. I mean, bad things happen, right? And why? And is that intentional? And does God let it happen? And why? We could just discuss that for days. Faith, and even faith. Our faith is a gift. Creation and the theories associated with creation. Man, I think when I've looked at some of the options that are out there, I think it may take more faith to believe in those than in a creator and one God that created, as outlined in the Bible. But these are things we can keep an open mind. We can talk about some of the things and what other people believe, and where does that leave us? Loving in difficult circumstances. That can be hard. Career versus calling, right? You may be a waitress. You may work in a factory. You may work in an office. You may work in retail. You may be a pastor. But regardless of what we do, we still have a calling even outside of that. And you can be a witness to others regardless of what you do. If everybody was a pastor, right, that would be difficult. But because we're all different, we have different gifts, we have different interests. Christians are spread throughout the world, and that can make a difference. So we could go a long way with that topic as well. Tithing. That can make you squirm a little bit. What is tithing? When did it start? What's it all about? Is it apply in the New Testament? Does it not apply? So that's a good topic. The history of the church, pathway, branches. Oh, man. I think it's fascinating because, right, Jesus was Jewish. And the first disciples that he called, Peter and Andrew and James and John, and, fishermen, and they were Jews, right? And all the disciples were Jews, I believe. And the thing is, then the gospel started to spread, right? The gospel, the good news, and that's a topic in itself, But then it went to Greeks, and it went to Romans, and others, and the church grew, right? And the whole discussion of Peter perhaps being the first pope in the Church of Rome, and then the Eastern Orthodox Church, more towards the Eastern, like Greek Orthodox, how that kind of split. And then, then we had King James, and we had the Church of England, and we had, Martin Luther, and the creation of Protestantism, easy for you to say, and the Protestant movement. And how does that all come into play? And then also some individuals that perhaps created cults out of selfishness, and the whole Muslim, Islamic, and many other different types of religions. Some that fall within the Christian realm, and some that kind of fall outside. Right? There's a lot of places we could go there as we look at the history of the church. One of my topics: cults. Prayer. What is prayer? Is prayer closing your eyes and being all alone and kneeling? Sometimes, maybe. Can you pray and drive? Do you need to be with a lot of people? Is it fancy words and long, drawn-out prayers? Is it sensational and loud? And, there are different types of prayers. And we can discuss that. But it's from the heart and real, I think, is kind of what my last editorial comments will be. Be real. Love. It's a topic in itself. Raising children, right? How has that changed over time? What are some of the challenges? That could be a good one. Again, we may not cover all these. We're not sure what order they'll be in. We're not sure how many episodes it will be, but these are just brainstormed topics. Education. Could go on. Healing. Interesting. Does God still heal today? God healed in the Bible. Jesus healed. Prophecy. Might have discussed that. Some of these might even be duplicates. Sunk costs. What's a sunk cost? There's a financial term of sunk costs. But is there a spiritual sunk cost? All the things that we've done in the past, weighing us down, heavy. But as a Christian, those are sunk costs, right? We can't change the past. Just like in finance, you don't spend good money after bad just because you already spent money. There can be a lot of discussion. Sunk costs, spiritual sunk costs, and the illustration, to financial sunk costs. Suicide. I'll tell you, that's a heavy one. I told you there could be some heavy topics. Is it the unforgivable sin? I don't think there's a person that's not 0, 1, 2 degrees away from suicide. When I mean they've either were struggled with it themselves, they've either known a loved one that struggled with it, or maybe went forward with it, or known a friend of a friend. But it's a tough topic, right? And it's what I believe is a mental illness. So discussing that and maybe bringing in, an expert, or bringing in resources that discuss this. God's temple, right? What is God's temple? Is it a building? Is it us? Israel, the nation. Wow, Israel was a nation. Then it wasn't a nation. Then it was a nation. Then it wasn't a nation. And then now it's a nation. I mean, we could go back and forth, but the whole history associated with that is quite fascinating. Life according to cartoons. This is a fun one, right? Life according to cartoons is kind of, it's a gift of mine that's really worthless. But I have this thing where different situations, whatever, will cause me to remember one-liners from cartoons. Looney Tunes, the Flintstones, the Jetsons. I mean, all of those cartoons from the 60s and the 70s that some of us grew up with. I've got this theory, we can live life according to cartoons. And sometimes you don't even have to explain the whole thing. You just throw the punchline out, and somebody that is similar to you in age and will start laughing because they remember it. And my wife kind of will do this. I'll throw things out and I'll say, do you remember that? And she goes, oh yeah, that was. And so I think it'd be fun to explore. We're getting towards the end here. Wandering in the desert. And what I mean by that is, the Israelites wandered in the desert. Moses, God, through Moses, took the Israelites out of Egypt. And those Israelites, they just didn't get it. They complained. It was too hot, so God gave them a cloud to shade them during the day. It was too cold. God gave them fire to lead them at night and perhaps warm them. Wow, now I'm thirsty. God gave them water. Now I'm hungry. God gave them manna. I'm tired of manna. God gave them the doves for meat. And, the Israelites had God so near in a pillar of fire, in a cloud, in the mountain, and the radiance from Moses as he came down. But yet they built an altar and a gold calf. How could they do that? Well, you know what? Let me tell you the rest of the story. I do that. I whine and complain. And I think back, sometimes I pause and I think back of how faithful God has been to me through the years, and I am ashamed. And I'll tell my wife, I am just like the Israelites. I am no judge. I can't be a judge. You know, if you point a finger, what? They say 3-point fingers are pointing back at you? Something like that. So I think it'd be fun to discuss. Am I the only one that feels this way? I don't know. I just see myself being a real big whiner at times, and that's not good. I want to be better than that. I want, with God's help, right? Because I can't even do things on my own without God's help. Again, a lot of discussion there. I think it'd be really interesting to look back at the history and also apply it to our lives now. Marriage and the history of marriage, the blessings, the challenges, and the cultural changes about marriage. And so many more topics too. But this is just a touch, again, a high level, and I'm hoping that my friend will listen to this and say, hey, I think this could go somewhere, and I want to be part of it. So thanks for listening. Let's get together again soon, and we'll be talking about some of these topics and just doing life together. Thank you. This is Bob Cook, host of the LFC Living for Christ, a walk to eternity, one guy and a mic. Thank you. God bless.